When you're with the Church of Christ, look at this. Somebody always is potentially going to die. And now you might be saying, okay, the crowd that I'm up in, what in the world? Knowing this, that our old man is crucified. So, I can tell you this. The Bible says that if we do our job, that all heaven's angels will start praising. Can you beat that in the church that you go to? All that shouting and carrying on? We're looking for somebody to die, and it takes some serious business to make that kind of thing, especially in these days that we live in. Man, y'all remember 9/11? Remember your representatives, government representatives that play around up in Washington, D.C.? Where were they? Man, they were all singing Amazing Grace, and they were praying. You know, that was good. I wish it would have gone further, but that was just 3 planes and 2 buildings and the Pentagon. But we just went through COVID, and that was catastrophic, and it's still lingering. And I don't think folk were broken nearly at all, really. You ended up having everybody thrown together in their house that normally, a lot of families wouldn't have put up with some of those family members. And I've got a friend here named Scott, and the other day we were together getting these banners, and he said, I made a lot of money during COVID. And I was like, well, most people are shut down. What do? I know what he does. He puts in windshields. Come to your house and put your windshield in. And I said, man, Scott, how'd you make a lot of money? He said, man, domestic violence was rampant. People busting out all their windows, not just the front, all the windows. And then different cars. If I had time, I could tell you a really funny windshield story from him. I like to fell out when I was driving. Why this lesson? This is going to be very serious, as Caleb said. For it seemed good, or he told what it was, for it seemed good to the Holy Ghost and to us to lay upon you no greater burden than these necessary things. What is going on in Acts 15 that they would get together with the apostles and the elders and basically discuss something that took the Apostle Paul and Barnabas off of their journey and the work that they were doing, and pretty much had upset the whole operation that Jesus had planned to take place? Well, here it is. In Matthew chapter 13:36, then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into his house, and his disciples came unto him, saying, declare unto us the parable of the tares. You ever heard the parable of the tares? Well, to make it basic this evening, he tells a story about wheat and then something else that looks like wheat. And it so conflicted them that they basically were still asking questions in verse 36, and I'm reading now from verse 24. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, this is where he introduced it. The kingdom of heaven is likened to a man which sowed good seed in his field, but while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. Now, I think we need to look at Jesus' explanation, because they weren't satisfied with just having the parable. It so perplexed them that they wanted to know more, and so he ends up telling them more. Now he's going to explain it. And he answered and said unto them, he that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, or the age. Jesus had prophesied that Jerusalem was going to be destroyed in their lifetime, and the reapers are the angels. So basically, can I say it this way just for the moment and you look at it later? The tares are coming up, and the tares actually are being seen in Acts chapter 15, and it's causing such a struggle in the work that they have to stop. And we're looking at this and we're getting to see that Jesus said it's the devil's doing. The devil actually was stopping the spread of the gospel. And the spread was going very, very well at this particular point. As soon as you get past Acts chapter 15 where we were, you start seeing it go all over the world, all over the known world. It's taken off. So you ask yourself, well, was that needful for them to do that? To stop everything and have this discussion where they end up basically saying, y'all need to leave the Gentiles alone. And this problem that we're having is actually of the devil. And so tonight, let me ask you this. As you think about Jesus and you look at the things that he went through, and when he was at the place, he said unto them, pray that ye enter not into temptation. And he was withdrawn from them about a stone's cast, and kneeled down and prayed, saying, Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. And there appeared an angel unto him from heaven, strengthening him. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly. And his sweat was as it were great drops of blood falling down to the ground. You ever ask yourself, when you think about Jesus, do you ever ask yourself, was that really necessary? You don't have to worry about them, Michelle. We're all used to babies. So you're doing great. Good to see you. Okay. Y'all can let Everett start hollering anytime you want to. You see, you know, he's begging his father if there's anything else, that could actually be done. And if you're willing to do that, could you remove this cup from me? This is as traumatic, just what if, when we think about this, what if each one of us had to see our firstborn die? That's what it took to get out of Egypt. Do y'all remember that? The Passover? The firstborn of every Egyptian and their cattle all died. Was that really necessary in order to get them out of there? Well, if you know that account, you know just how diabolical people can be that are, let's say, ruling the world rulers. And it was necessary for God to threaten everybody, and he gave the remedy to the children of Israel. Put a lamb's blood on the doorpost, but every son, firstborn of the Egyptians, died. And it's like, sometimes people say God is cruel, and, it is hard to understand sometimes, but tonight that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to find out if if all of this is necessary. In Matthew chapter 4, verse 8, everybody knows that Jesus was tempted. Everybody knows the temptation of Christ. And, I think a lot of people know all of it. There were 2 other temptations before this one. He's fasting 40 days, and the devil tempts him with his own ability, Jesus' ability, to prove that he's the Son of God by making the stone bread and alleviate his hunger. And he didn't respond. And the next one was, you could get on the pinnacle of the temple and jump off, and it's been said that God would give the angels charge over you. You would not hurt, you wouldn't even dash your foot on a stone, and Jesus didn't respond. But I'm not saying anything about what we would do as far as why the devil chose those with Jesus, but I am saying this. If he chose this one with us, do you think that there are people that rule us that are giving in to this temptation? This is man, when we talk about what we would give in for, seriously, the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. Skeptics say that's, this is how we prove the Bible's ridiculous. Can you see the glory of all the kingdoms on television nowadays? In just a short amount of time? You could see every major country in the world's palace in just a few minutes because of what the time frame we are. And to think that this would make you a skeptic because you heard that the devil already showed this kind of stuff. CNN can do this today. And he said unto him, all these things will I give thee if you will fall down and worship me. May I pry a little bit? What does it take to get us? What does it take to get you to worship the devil? Well, I don't really think that I am worshiping the devil. Well, if you're not worshiping God, is it possible to convince God that you're not actually under the control of the devil? I mean, a lot of people don't want to look at it that way, and now you might be saying, well, maybe you would need to tell me the degree to which you're describing so that I can figure out if it is the case. Well, Jesus is pretty clear in Matthew 12:30. You're either for me or against me. And you're either gathering or you're spreading abroad. So, and that's not that hard, is it? Are you gathering? Like even in the church, everybody here is not a member of the same religious group. Are you gathering in that religious group, or is that, somebody else's job? The evangelists and the missionaries. All of us are supposed to be involved in trying to help change our neighbors and the people around us. And so when you look at this basically makes me think that if the devil is offering Jesus the glory of all the kingdoms, and I would say our presidents and the presidents of other countries, they've given into this. I mean, if I don't watch too much of the news, but I hear that we could be having a war. What's that about? It's about somebody wanting to rule the world. And so when we think about that kind of thing and losing our own freedom as a result of a war, how would you like for your grandson to be drafted? Did somebody say, you can shake or nod, did we actually hear lately that the draft is possibly fixing to be enacted again? I knew I heard it. I heard somebody say it. Now, that's how it goes. And that's, I would not like that. Tanner would be in the list somewhere. He'd be different if he didn't have a child, but you may have a nephew or whatever. So this is very, very serious. In Luke 16, verse 27, then he said, this is the account where Lazarus dies and the rich man dies. The beggar and the rich man die. Everybody knows that. You say, well, you didn't know it was Lazarus. You said Lazarus. The rich man and the beggar died. And I pray unto thee, and they're in torment, and the rich man is saying this, I pray thee, therefore, Father, Abraham, that's who he's talking to, that thou would send into my father's house, for I have 5 brethren, that he may testify unto them, lest they also come to this place of torment. Abraham saith unto him, they have Moses and the prophets, let them hear them. And he said, nay, Father Abraham, but if one went unto them from the dead, they will repent. And he said unto him, if they hear not Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded, though one rose from the dead. Is that really the truth? I mean, one raising from the dead? Have you ever thought about if you had somebody raised from the dead, like if they had given in to that? Wouldn't you actually have to have somebody raised from the dead for every generation for that to work out? I want you to send somebody who's dead, and to my brothers, okay, I'm going to send somebody, and let's say they did repent. Well, wouldn't it be the case that you would keep having to do that every generation? And wouldn't it be the case that if you're going to work it that way, you're going to have somebody raised from the dead in every country, every geographical area? Because, I mean, you're really not. Someone might say, well, wait a minute. If they had seen the beggar, am I right? The beggar's Lazarus. My brain's, yeah, Lazarus. If they had seen Lazarus, would that have really worked? I just don't see how that one person raising from the dead is actually going to fix the entire world. And so let's look at this. Luke 24:3. And they entered in and found not the body of the Lord Jesus. And it came to pass, as they were much perplexed thereabout, behold, two men stood by them in shining garments. And as they were afraid and bowed down their faces to the earth, they said unto them, Why seek you the living among the dead? He's not here, but is risen. Remember how he spake unto you when he was yet in Galilee, saying, The Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and be crucified, and the third day rise again. Now watch this. They remembered the words and returned from the sepulchre and told all these things to the 11 and to all the rest. It was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary the mother of James and other women that were with them, which told these things unto the apostles. And their words seemed to them as idle tales, and they believed them not. It's already starting right here. They're seeing angelic beings, and they're being told that Jesus is not here. He's gone to he's done what he prophesied, going to Galilee, and he reminded them about raising from the dead. And then some of the disciples actually see him raised from the dead. And they don't even believe that it is him, and they don't believe the reports of other individuals. They basically do this again. It seemed like idle tales, and they believed it not. So you have Jesus raising from the dead. And did that work? If it worked, why are we discussing Acts 15:28? Necessary things having to be done in order to stop the arguing between the Jews and the Gentiles while they're evangelizing. Wouldn't the fact that Jesus raised from the dead, one came back from the dead, and there are some men that have seen him and that he was buried, they're preaching the gospel that he was buried and rose again the third day according to the scriptures, and that he was seen of Cephas, then of 12. After that, look at this, 500 brethren at once. So you're actually getting Jesus to raise from the dead, and you're getting 500 people that see him. Is it working? No, it's not really working, in the sense that the rich man said that it would. My brothers would surely actually be affected. And so we're discussing, is this really necessary to go through all this? And can we think a minute about our community? What would it get to get this community to change? Did y'all like my sign out there? 27 years. We have been broadcasting, and I mean to tell you, we've been getting with it. And we've had these tents. I don't know, we're 30 plus of these meetings, these events that we've put up. And we've had people knocking doors. We've knocked tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of doors in this county and in Pennsylvania County and in Rockingham County over that 27 years. And still, I know that we have people watching our broadcasts, and we're very thankful that that is the case, and they're everywhere. But it's going to take a lot to make the changes that we need. And you might be asking, what is the change that we need? The one thing that I can think about that is the most, that's screaming for attention, is this one right here. Matthew chapter 12, verse 25. And Jesus knew their thoughts, and said unto them, Every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. Every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. That where we are today? Religiously, every kingdom, our nation is divided, our city is divided, and our families are divided. What do we hope to get from that? We're not going to get the results that Jesus wants. And you know, it could be that you're here tonight and you're saying, well, Johnny, tell us something. You know, tell us something amazing, magnificent. Here it is. What would it take? One church. That's it. You know, I've got a person that I've been admiring for a long time, and I'm actually now associated with him much closer, and his name's Gino Jennings. I've been preaching this one church business the entire time that I've been here, and Gino Jennings is preaching that now. I didn't always key in on it. Maybe I didn't see enough of his broadcasts back then, but in 2000 when he was here, I was right down there at the hotel with him. I didn't hear any of that. And he was over in England the other day. It was a magnificent beginning to his sermon. He just said, God makes this stuff simple. One church. And you can read about it in Matthew 16:18. Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church. You know what that would do? If people paid attention to just that, and they do pay attention because people call in on our broadcast and they say something about their church. And then they ask me, well, what do y'all do in your church? I say, I don't have a church. And then they start correcting themselves. I know you don't have a church. And it's supposed to be Jesus' church. And then I got them. I mean, they're done, really. It's Jesus' church. Did Jesus' church be built in the time frame when Jesus said it was going to be built? Did he begin something after he died and raised from the dead? Yes, he did. It started in Jerusalem, and almost everybody knows that. Why? Because we have so many Pentecostals, right? They all believe and teach that they're Pentecostal, and they talk about the first church starting on the day of Pentecost. So see, it's actually being put out there. So if that's the first church and it's the only church, why is it that we're not all in that church? That is the Pentecostal church. Well, number one, it's not Jesus' church. It doesn't even wear Jesus' name. It wears a feast day's name. Pentecost, that means 50. And so when we're thinking about that, they didn't come on the scene until like 1914, particularly the one in the Godhead group. And so that couldn't be Jesus' church. And so I know this makes so easy sense because it's the biggest argumentative point that I have had for the last 20-something years on television. When I say that your church needs to be in the Bible and we offer $1,000 for people to present the denomination they're in, and we don't give it away, there's only one guy in this area that really doesn't get it, and his name is Joe Prater. He's so silly that he doesn't realize that the church of God is the church of Christ, the body of Christ. There are designations for the same thing. I mean, Jesus spelled that out when he said about he said, mine are thine and thine are mine. Jesus and God's, basically the people belong to both of them. So if you read in 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and 2 about the church of God, you're reading about the church of Christ as well. When you're reading in Romans 16:16, you're reading about the church of Christ. It actually says the churches of Christ salute you. Well, that's all there is. That's all there was. And then today I don't know. I'm saying, is this necessary? When you get down to it, when it's that simple, just one church. I'm asking you, would one church do? Do you think that would solve all the problems? We'd all be satisfied with just one kind of church. And if you could come up with one that's better than the one written, I would be in it. If you could come up with one better than the one that's written in God's Word, because he's happy with that, and he's been holding this Word together all these years. If you could come up with one better than that, I might consider it. Well, someone came in here the other day, and he was converted out of the Mormon church. That's the church, the LDS, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Church of Christ. But now he's out of that. Why? Because he started studying his Bible, and he realized there's no such thing as the stuff that Joseph Smith was teaching. And you might say, well, he wasn't a good Mormon. He was a good Mormon. His family wasn't Mormons, and he did the tour when he was 19 and paid for his own stay in Mexico. His family wasn't even paying for it. He was a good Mormon, and he studied his way out of it. So this is necessary, y'all. It is necessary. If we could have 500 people that saw Jesus, in our lifetime, we've had people that said they talked to Jesus, and that's not actually helping because they can't prove it. And so let me introduce the best man in the Bible. Let me get away with saying that, please, tonight. Acts 13:22. When he had removed him, he raised up unto them David to be their king, to whom also he gave testimony and said, I have found David, the son of Jesse, a man after my own heart, which shall fulfill all my word. The reason I'm doing this is because I want you to think about who God would send, okay? If you were going to have, you're going to have to get ready for people having their faults. We had an atheist that debated me on television named Bob Lawson. Bob's son died. That's the reason he was here. His son was in California. He was in California and his son got sick, and he came to stay with his son while he had cancer, and he was a very bitter man after his son died. And when we were debating, he was a big skeptic, and so he just kept on. And so he ended up saying, after the debate, we were standing outside, and he said, Johnny, I know one thing. If God wanted to reach me, he surely wouldn't send somebody like you. I'm fine with that. I can deal with that. As a matter of fact, I don't really think I am the best man for the job. But there's not that many people lining up for my job. And so until that happens, I'm good to stay and good to keep doing it. But I would like to have you tonight, if you would, with me. Basically, he is a man after God's own heart, which shall fulfill all my will. Here's a man that God gives major approval to. I meant to fix that. If you watch us on TV, you're used to this kind of thing, aren't you? And put up with it. I'm saying I really love you. I'm being encouraged. 2 Samuel 12:7. And Nathan said to David, Thou art the man. Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I anointed thee king over Israel, and I delivered thee out of the hands of Saul. Now watch this. This to me, this is like a moment where David has done something really terrible, and pretty much everybody knows it. He has actually killed someone for their wife. But what we're having here is a talk with David about things he could have thought about before he did that. And that's what the rest of the lesson is about. It's about thinking about things that if they were displayed beforehand, would we have actually done them? And here he goes. I gave thee thy master's house, thy master's wives into thy bosom, and I gave thee the house of Israel and of Judah. And if that had been too little, I would moreover have given unto thee such and such things. Are you hearing this? This was not one of my verses. I have to admit to you, I've read a lot of stuff in and around this and have preached out of this passage, this area, and studied it and whatever, but this wasn't one of my verses. I'm just saying, it just never got stuck with me. But boy, it is now. Matter of fact, it changed me today when it comes to big pocket change. Can I use it that way? You ever think about how we feel about what God can do for us? And what that does, according to this, is it actually limits God. I started getting pretty excited about the idea when he said, if that had been too little, the things that we sell God out for. You ever think about that? The idea that this might pop up and we say, man, like this week, hot. Last year, y'all, it rained big time. And we had a great time with door knocking. You know why? We had everybody go out in their cars, and they went to the local convenience stores and asked, could we put out 25 flyers in their convenience store? And they said, sure. Man, we handed out hundreds. Did we do more than hundreds during the? Okay, more than hundreds. In your air conditioner car, out to a convenience store, and I actually never prayed for rain before during a tent meeting. But I was fine if you were praying for rain during that tent meeting because we were doing a lot of work. But it's been hot. And I'm just saying, things that you think about are things that come up that start causing a person to start saying, I don't have I hate to go through examples, but, I might hit on something. My house needs to be repaired, and I know if I borrow, it's going to make me work a lot of different hours, and I will miss the times that I'm going to be with Christian people and the time of study with them. Is it really worth it? Is it really worth whatever you know, it's hard for people to make up stuff for themselves because you don't want to think about stuff like that often. But if that had been too little, I would moreover have given unto thee such and such things. Now, look at this. Wherefore hast thou despised the commandment of the Lord? You might say, you know, I want to ask you to think about, each one of us think about ourselves. Have you ever despised the commandment of the Lord? Do you know that the word despise it means lightly esteem? Are there some things that you're willing to just kind of move over to the side, and other things that you might say are extremely important? But he's asking him, you know, and I hate to make this like a simplistic thing, because after all, he did kill somebody. And he said, wherefore hast thou despised the commandment of the Lord? But he is saying, look, I would have given you more. And, you know, in that time frame, you could actually say, if you were wanting another wife, you could have gotten one legally instead of killing somebody. I would have given you more. I would have given unto you such and such things. But you decided to make this decision. Now watch what's coming. The commandment of the Lord to do evil in his sight. Thou hast killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and hast taken his wife to be thy wife, and hast slain him with the sword of the children of Ammon. Now therefore the sword shall, here it comes. If you hadn't known this beforehand, this right here is enough to get me going. Just to think that when I don't do things that I know, and I'm not even saying should, I'm saying I could, things that I could. And one of the most powerful things in now prayer is my most powerful thing. And I have started forgiving people big time since I made up my mind to pray what Jesus taught the disciples to pray in Matthew 6. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive others their trespasses. Man, I could hold on to some stuff and I didn't even think about it. But I'm now wanting to forgive everybody. I don't want to be hating on anybody. I don't want to be thinking about stuff that they did to me. That's a powerful arsenal that God's given us. But don't we all know money? Money is a powerful, powerful tool. And if God is saying, and listen, y'all, we're not going to pass the plate. Y'all know that, don't you? So this doesn't have anything to do with you and your money you got in your pocket, okay? But I would have done more, and I would have done such and such things. I do not mind giving money away. And I'm saying I don't really let too many people get personal with my wife. But if you'd like to ask her a personal question tonight, you can go ahead and ask her. You can ask anybody, really, that knows me. Man, Johnny, when it comes to storing up, that dude is kind of like the grasshopper in the ant story. You know, I don't know if y'all remember that. The grasshopper doing his thing all the time, and the ant, he's working it up, and he's looking for the hard time. When it comes to money, I believe this verse, but I didn't even know this verse. I hadn't even read this verse. And that it had been too little that I gave you all these things, I would moreover have given unto thee such and such things. Easy come, easy go. I believe that I can use that, and I enjoy it, and the people that I can give money to, they enjoy it. And then guess what? So far, I told you last night, it might have sounded like I was complaining about worrying about my paycheck, but I was telling you how shameful I was that I actually worry about it, because ever since I've been in Martinsville, I've been doing okay. That paycheck just keeps rolling in there, and the TV time keeps rolling in, and people on Star News tell this big old lie about me. Johnny's got a whole bunch of oil well friends down in Texas because that's where he's from. I don't. I got people just like us that basically know that if we won't limit God, that he will do such and moreover. And so I don't want to be like that. And then you have this. You basically hear this. So what I was saying about that is, are you tired of being poor? And you might say right now, seriously, he's fixing to go health and wealth on us? No, I'm not. But I'm just saying, if it is the case that Jesus is said to have said that blessed are more blessed to give than to receive. He is definitely saying it right here, that I would have done more for you if you wouldn't have taken a man's wife, but rather you just, be satisfied with what you have. But look at this. He now starts telling his future. Now, therefore, the sword shall never depart from thine house, because thou hast despised me, and hast taken Uriah the Hittite, the wife of Uriah Hittite to be your wife. Thus saith the Lord, behold, I will raise up evil against thee out of thine own house, and I will take thy wives before thine eyes, and give them unto thy neighbor, and he shall lie with thy wives in the sight of this sun. For thou didst secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun. All of us that had our parents, they would tell us often, if you run around with people that are breaking the law and you get caught with them, you heard that from your mama or your grandmama, your daddy or your grandpa, your uncle. It was just something that they all told us, because it is the case. And, it's like you're forewarned. Is it the case? And it is, and we're not going to do that tonight, but I'm saying, what do you think David would have done if all of this could have been shown him before? And, that's just the thing that we always say. I didn't see that coming. Is that why that's an old saying? Well, I did, I cheated the government, and I didn't see the IRA was coming. The IRS. I really didn't see that the IRS was going to be coming. What did you think? Who did you think they was going to send? Publishers Clearinghouse? They don't come for your money when you cheat the government. And it's like we do see this stuff, but we choose to somehow or other. Y'all, can we be just like candid with each other? This is my new grandson over here. He's been, I'm not going to say his name for sure. Caleb told me a story about him, and it kind of went like this, that his laptop is open a lot at home, and it's hard not saying his name. He just wants to touch that keyboard so bad. And he would get over there close to it, and they'd be watching him. He didn't know it, and he'd be looking around, and he eventually would get over there and touch it. And I like, when I hear that, I think, wasn't that cute? I just would have liked to see him, because I have seen him do stuff that he wasn't supposed to do, and he's looking around, and we just think, man, aren't children something? Aren't grown-ups something? Don't we do the same thing? This idea of despising God is the idea of thinking lightly. Here I am, and I'm going along, and I'm going to pray this morning, and then later on in the afternoon, I'm just going to kind of pull a shade down, and I'm going to do whatever it is that I do. Is that not right? People do things, and it's like, my wife's not looking, or my boss is not looking, and that's one thing. But to pull that shade down and just kind of zip up everything and say, God doesn't see me right now. And you might say, we don't say that. Yes, we do. We are made in such a way that our brains can just like temporarily X out reality. And isn't that something? It's like sometimes people do stuff and another person says, I was looking right at you. Did you not see me looking at you? Well, if I had seen you looking at me, I wouldn't have done it. Well, how about say that to God? If I had seen you looking at me, I wouldn't have done it. He sees us, whether we just consciously, unconsciously, whatever, pull that shade down and do the things that we do to each other, to, one of the things that I would say is very, very prevalent is when we're driving and when we're on social media. It's like we say things and the whole world sees it, and it's like, well, God didn't see that, or it's unimaginable that people would say that God saw it. That's lightly thinking about God. It's like he's going to come back to you the next time you pray. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, except when the shade is down. I'm saying, is that not us? You know, when we think of the word despise, we think of somebody who we really got into it with, maybe on social media, and they end up sending us a message that says, I despise you. You just have made me despise you. The other atheist, Larry Serber, one day we were on television and he said, I just hate you sometime. And it's like, but you see this? We call God, hallowed be thy name, and it's like the rest of the time we're acting like he doesn't pay attention. And you know the point I'm trying to make here? I'm asking you to be thinking about David, because David is God's best man. And in Psalm 90, verse 8, thou hast set our iniquities before thee, our secret sins in the light of thy countenance. God sees his secret sins, and that's what he's actually telling David. But look at this. I want you to think about David, and I want you to think about God and who he's going to send to you next. He's already sent his son. We say, was that necessary? Yes, it was. And it was necessary to raise him from the dead, and he was hoping that many, many more would be obedient, but it's not the case. He has to send out more than 500 men, but not that have seen him, but they have to preach and they have to make reasonable arguments. But look at this. What if he were to send one more and he was like David? And you have to think about what God uses when you're thinking about those kinds of things. And I'm actually asking you to think about me. Am I worthy of you to listen to when you start talking about who God would send? Let's look at David just before what happened. The Lord sent Nathan to David, and he came to him, and he said unto them, there were two men in one city, and one was rich and the other poor. The rich man had exceeding many flocks, but the poor man had nothing save one little I got caught in that trap. Ewe lamb, which he had bought and nursed up, and it grew up together with him and with his children. It did eat of his own meat and drank of his own cup, and lay in his bosom, and was unto him as a daughter. And there came a traveler unto the rich man, and he spared to take of his own flock and of his own herd, to dress of the wayfaring man that was come unto him. And he took the poor man's lamb, and dressed it for the man that was come to him. And David's anger was greatly kindled against the man. And he said unto Nathan, as the Lord liveth, the man that had done this shall surely die, and he shall restore the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing, and because he had no pity. There's your judge. You know, how many judges have sentenced people for a crime like stealing, and then you find out the judge is embezzling? And you just say, boy, that's terrible. And I would never want to go before that judge. Well, that's David right here is being told, without knowing it, that he represents an individual who actually took the most precious thing that this one man had, and he had plenty of lambs. And then David actually sees correctly and says, well, this man needs to die. And he needs to pay fourfold before he dies. So before he dies, he's going to basically require from the family the substance that they have, and then he's going to kill this man. Now, y'all, I'm saying, when you start thinking about who it is that's going to come into your life and tell you the truth, let's be real. It could be the last person that you would think that God would send. And yet God actually feel about that person that he's a man after my own heart. Well, how do you get to do that? He always will do my will. I'm saying, if you live in Martinsville and if you don't, if you watch us on television, do you think that we get a beating regularly for the fact that we tell it like it is all the time? I mean, we get run through the ringer, at least it seems, but it really isn't. Because that other passage where it says that if you would not despise my word, I would do even more for you, and such things and such things. The reason that I'm preaching this lesson tonight is because I actually fear some of those such things are fixing to happen to me. What such things? You fear having more and more? I would have given you more and more. Number one, the Mormon guy that came in here that's wanting to preach, he's only been a member of the Church of Christ 9 months. And already he's made a trip to Martinsville from Missouri. I'm flabbergasted. Of all the websites that you can see out there, and you're a new member of the Church of Christ, and you need to come to Martinsville to see the people that actually operate, what does the Bible say? You know why he did that? 2 reasons. Number one, he wanted to know how to do it. So he came ground zero to see how we do it. Number two, he was astounded by what he actually sees us getting done with so few people. Now see, a lot of the preachers think they got to have a mega church, don't they? Get something done. Well, if you're doing what they're doing, which is putting money in your pocket, you do have to have a mega church. But if you're trying to get the word out, I was supposed to be having a banner, and I hope and pray next week we get it done that stretches as big as that other one up there, and it advertises our debate with Geno Jennings in August of 2024. Some people may have been saying, or they have their own opinions about whether or not it'll actually happen. That doesn't worry me. I still get to advertise it, and you know why I get to advertise it? Y'all, I'm not a bold person. You may think that I am. I'm just as scared as anybody else, and particularly of the police. Man, I am scared of the police. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in just a minute. I've been in the penitentiary, and man, when you've been in the penitentiary, the police have made an impression on you. I'm just scared. But when it comes to getting into a position where I might not be supposed to be where I am, I'm going to do it for the Lord's sake, and I need to be in a position. I like Geno Jennings. If you're here tonight and you're wondering, I love this man, and I like him. Because, man, you ever getting tired of looking at nakedness? Guys, you ever get tired of looking at nakedness? Geno Jennings is your man. Man, he can get some clothes on a woman very fast. I am telling you. And some people might say he overdoes it. You know, I've seen some women that have stuff all the way from head to toe. You can't even tell who they are. He gets some clothes on some women. And, you know, I don't know what to say about men. He works on men as well, and it's not, I mean, it's necessary, but men aren't as appealing as women. Ladies, y'all just got it hands down when it comes to the appeal. And he definitely does that. And so I like him, and I would love to have a sit down with him on television and make him do what does the Bible say. We're going to talk about the Godhead. Everybody knows that. But we'll be talking about Jesus' church, which he says he's in. It don't have just one apostle. I mean, that's getting to the point now where Geno can't deal with it. Do you know that guy's got 80 churches? 80 different countries, I believe is how that goes, where churches are now. 92 million views on his YouTube. And you might say, why are you talking about him? Y'all, I'm talking about him because I actually have it on the record, recorded, that he says he's going to debate me. And that scares me, not the debate. What scares me is the more and more. I'm doing all I can with what we are right here and how we're getting the word out and the people that call us and things of that nature. The idea of getting really big does not appeal to me. Got some people from Georgia right there on the very back, and then another man here from Georgia. And I am so emotional about them that I go into Georgia quite a lot. I don't want to do that. I'm saying I will do it, but I am not one of these people that just am dying for a big crowd of people that I have to look after. And, you know, I know those other guys don't look after their crowd either. They look after their money, the crowd's money. And so tonight, I'm asking you, If the Lord was going to send someone, would you ask him, would he send David, King David? And I think pretty much everybody would. But then did you stop to think about King David? This dude can get seriously mixed up. And you're basically hearing him pronounce a death sentence to another person, and he's actually the one doing the stuff. And how did he get in that position? Here we go, right back. He pulled that shade down. What do you think he was thinking about God when he's looking at Uriah's wife over there in a compromising situation? I don't think he was thinking about God at all. That's why we're saying that despise mean lightly esteemed. He just was overwhelmed by his own lust, his own desire. Am I speaking our language now? Our desires, our lust, whether it's for pleasure, whether it's for attention, these things they actually put us in a position where we just take God out of the equation. And then when we think about who's going to talk to us about it, I don't know that anybody wants anybody to talk to them. And I know a lot of people don't want me to talk to them. But we just keep it up. Why? Because we believe that ultimately you're going to listen. Because people listened to David, and God chose a man just like this. Howbeit, because by this deed thou hast given great occasion to the enemies of the Lord to blaspheme, the child also that is born unto thee shall surely die. You recognize that dude? That's Johnny Robertson. I couldn't be over 20 because I got out of the penitentiary when I was 20. And you may be thinking this is going to be something that I tell you. That's my mother. She just left, by the way. You may be thinking that I'm going to tell you something that's going to be similar to what other preachers say and do. Actually, it's not. It's one of those things that I would like to do just before I die, if I were going to do it at all. It actually is one of those things that, to a certain degree, people around here do know to a certain degree, because when I was fired at the Collinsville Church of Christ, they were so angry about the fact that they couldn't get rid of me, and that's what they were trying to do. They told me I had to move 100 miles away. And they actually had possession of the Martinsville building, 823 Starling Avenue, and I took it away from them. And boy, they hated that. The secretary got online, and she looked up my criminal record. Next thing you know, Charles has got it. Next thing you know, people were speculating because they couldn't figure out what I did. And it was even said that I raped a 3-year-old. Man, it was not good. Caleb, did y'all know I'd been in prison? Maybe not. He's not sure. That was in somewhere around 2001. And so you would have been pretty young. Okay, from me. So what I'm wanting to do is warn you. Don't go to prison. Yeah, right? Do I have to warn you don't go to prison? I'm not warning you not to go to prison. I'm warning you, I'm starting to warn you, don't despise God. Don't think lightly of God. Don't pull the shade down. Because when you do that, we should think about those things that he said to David. It was worse than he thought was ever going to happen. People are going to be laying with his wives. He's going to be having the sword in his life. He's going to be just done all kinds of way in front of everybody. So, y'all, I went out in the country, and I didn't know the people out there. I just knew it was in the country. Why do you think I left town, the city, and went out in the country? You know, somebody robbed people in the city. I'm not one of them. Went out in the country because I didn't think anybody would see me. Went out in the country, pulled up to a store, 4 other guys, 3 of us went in, and do you know all we were doing is just wanting to know what it feels like to rob somebody. And I wanted to feel like that the most. None of the rest of them would carry the gun. And I walked right up to an old man, and don't think I am happy about it, just an old man. And I just pointed the gun at him and said, I want you to empty the cash register. And you know I was caught, you can tell that. But what do you think I was thinking? Can I tell you what our getaway car was? Now, y'all don't laugh too hard. 5 guys in a Pinto. Only us older people know what a Pinto is. I mean, that is just the height of stupidity. 5 guys in a Pinto. That sounds like a joke that got started, doesn't it? Doesn't it, Al? Man. And so, I'm not telling you this. The moral of this story is don't rob somebody in a Pinto, because you're not going to get away. And the moral of the story isn't, several different things. But we just wanted to know what it felt like. I'm pretty sure, Ian, I know my record has kept me out of a lot of different places, because when your employer finds out that you actually put a gun in somebody's face just to see what it feels like. So, but here's the thing. I go to prison, and you might say, well, why are you doing this anyway? Can I tell you something? Stuff like this, the older you get, it haunts you. Stuff that you've done, it haunts you. And when you start thinking about how you treated God, I knew about the truth. My mother was a member of the Church of Christ. I had been brought up by parents that taught me to do better. And I was just pulling that shade down in that time frame in my life, and I decided to do this. And I ended up going to prison, and now I'm older. And as fate would have it, guess where I'm working a lot of the time now? I'm working in Texas, where I'm from. And wouldn't you know that one of the guys that I'm working with, when I get out there towards his house, I end up on the road to the prison where I was actually in prison. And it just haunts me even more. And not only does it haunt me, it makes me want to warn people. And then I think, who would listen to me? Who would listen to Johnny? The dude's a convicted felon. And I came across this lesson, and I told Caleb, I need to get some things out off of myself. And I don't know that this has ever gone out on anything like it is tonight, because that's not the rest of the story. Do you know, look at me. Boy, I'm fresh, aren't I? That's fresh. For prison, I'm telling you, that's fresh. I debated a guy here in town that's a retired Marine, and he's a homosexual now. And that's one of the reasons that he wanted to debate me on television. And he said, I know what happened to you in prison. He said, nobody can look like you look and go to real prison and nothing happened to them. Well, whatever he says. But I'm telling you that when I got to prison, I had it on my mind, I will kill you if I can to keep from being raped. And I prayed a lot. And very quickly, I got an uncle that was in the prison system. I didn't get him to, somebody did, to get me moved to a turnkey position where I was always in the open working with the guards. And so, y'all, I made it, whether you believe me or not, through my 2-year stretch. The very fact that I only got 2 years for armed robbery is something. I made it through my stretch. I had to fight. If you'll fight, a lot of these guys will leave you alone because everybody goes to solitary confinement, at least after the riots that happened in the 70s, and I was after the 70s. So I made it. Okay, so that's man, it's a good story. It's not really that exciting, is it? So, okay, y'all, it's bad enough that you get yourself in a position where you're so confused and you're thinking so lightly of God that you will actually make a mistake that is drastic, and you find yourself having to pay for it and paying for it for the rest of your life. I still have the same record in Texas that I had when I was there. that's bad. But, you know, you've heard prison stories before. So, you know, when they let me out of prison, they let me out in Huntsville, Texas at the Walls unit. That's where they process you. And pretty much the only person in the world that I hadn't completely convinced to hate me and stay away from me was my daddy. My mama couldn't help me because she is in Louisiana, so my dad was a rough character, and I just was in Texas and I had to parole to him. He left my mother for a stripper when I was 9 years old. And so that's who I was paroling to. I get out, I'm a convict, I'm 20 years old, and I get out of the Walls unit and I am scared to death. But my daddy's coming to get me. And y'all, my daddy and his wife trapped me in a hotel room in Huntsville, Texas. I made it all the way through a prison sentence, looking like I look, with murders, rapists, all kinds of folk, and most of them young. The unit I was in was 18 to 35 years old. Man, getting out of there without being raped and then be trapped in a hotel room by a couple of sex-crazed psychos is awful. And so, you know, I knew that I was going to go to prison if I robbed somebody, but I never dreamed that when I got free from prison, the first thing, all of those vows that I had made, all of the plans that I had made to keep myself honest and clean and upright, where do you think they went? I just thought, man, going to prison wasn't the end of the world. This was the end of the world. And as we drove back to our part of Texas, Northeast Texas, I just thought, there is really no way to fathom what the devil has in store for you if he can get you to just pull the shade down and think lightly of God and do things that you never would dream how they turn out. Tonight, I don't know what you think about that situation, but can I tell you one that's actually going on right now that's even worse to me? I have a half brother that spent his entire life with my daddy and his mama, and he's in a Texas penitentiary doing 2 life sentences. You know why he's doing 2 life sentences? He molested his own children, and he molested my sister's children, his nieces. He was on the top 10 FBI wanted list, and he ran for several years. And when he was caught, like 10 years, when he was caught, his mother had cancer, and she had a patch where she could give herself morphine, and she killed herself. Shortly after the trial, when he was sentenced, my dad unplugged his defibrillator and let himself die with a heart attack. And my half-brother, who never had a chance, I'm saying he was raised by predators, is suffering with 2, did I say life sentences? 100-year sentences. And I am pretty much what y'all are stuck with for a person to tell the truth in this area. That's sad. Surely there could have been a more acceptable and useful servant that the Lord could have sent to you people that are worthy. But he sent his son, And then he gave us David as an example of the best that he's got, a man after his own heart who would always do his will. He sometimes did other things too when he wasn't thinking about what God was thinking. And so tonight, are we thinking what God is thinking while we actually hear the lesson that we're talking about right now? Are you thinking about the last time that you saw, what does the Bible say, with either Caleb or myself? And do you realize the devil was thinking too? And God was thinking, because he said, I fear, he had Paul right, I fear lest by any means as the serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety, so your mind should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. You know, I have to say amen to Gino. It's so simple. He just got one church. Man, how can you mess that up? And then he said that it's my church in Matthew 16:18. I'll build my church. And then the devil basically is put on the spotlight again by Paul. If our gospel be hid, it is hid to them that are lost. Who are those people? They're the people that's got the shade pulled down and they're just not listening to God right now, in whom the God of this world have blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them. What do you do when you're trying to keep the light out? We got a really, really dark shade at our house, in our room, for the sunlight in the morning. We pull that thing down. You can't even see the sunlight. Our mind does that to us too. It just kind of X's out. How old are some of y'all? It X's out how old we are in our own mind. And we got people I'm 64, y'all, and I'm thinking, I told Caleb today, I wish that I could go ahead and die. And you might say, what a morbid thought. Really? And I don't mean any harm, but just 27 years here in Martinsville, pouring my heart out to the people in Martinsville and doing the kind of stuff we do, this is rugged stuff. We don't even have Caleb and I don't even have an air conditioner in our office. It's been difficult. I've been overseas twice living, and I've been in the pen and had this kind of stuff actually happen to me. I have PTSD about this kind of stuff, not to mention the PTSD to deal with the police. And if you were watching us a couple years ago, they threatened to put Caleb in jail if he preached one night. And if you heard that story, they were very, very serious, so serious that the top supervisor or whatever his job was left town rather than be served by our lawyer. That was scary, and that was very scary for me. And my question is tonight, what is it that's keeping us? It can't be the message. Look at this. We read a story about David that was awful, and then you hear in Acts 13 that he is a man after God's own heart, and then you hear, if you read in 2 Samuel 7:15, but my mercy shall not depart away from him as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before thee. Now think about this, the mercy of God. You might be saying, this is what Charles Rourke says all the time. He said, I just can't live up to the Church of Christ. And I'm just like Charles, which Charles, he makes a lot of excuses for what he does. But I talk to him and I'm worried about him, and he may be listening right now. If you think you can't make it, God said, my mercy shall not depart away from him. Do you think God means that? David killed a man and took his wife, and still God had mercy on him. Man, is anybody planning on killing anybody before you die? Well, at least you can make it with that one. What's worse than that? Well, taking another man's wife, that's pretty bad, along with killing him. And so if you're not figuring on doing any of those kinds of things, well, what is it then that God would actually take his mercy away from you? I can't imagine anything worse than that. Can y'all? When I was talking about this business about like letting people know the kinds of things that go through my head, Caleb said, Dad, I really would have thought by now the things that we study that you would be more comfortable. And I said, Caleb, I am very comfortable between myself and God, but I am so uncomfortable for the people that I know that somehow or other are not getting the message that we're putting out. And it just, as I say, I told my daughter-in-law, Caleb's wife, she hasn't been with us all that long. They've been married 8 years. And I called her outside and I said, Ariel, I don't want you to be shocked. And looks like she's gone right now with Everett. I said, I don't want you to be shocked, but I'm going to tell something really horrific about myself. And you know, can I tell you this? The devil's not through. My mother was married to a fella, her last husband, and he got so rough. She was a member of the Church of Christ, and she married a Baptist. I don't know why she did that with a son like me, because I'm not hushing up about him being a Baptist. I want him to be a Christian in the Church of Christ. She stayed with him for 17 years, and one day she was on her way to church on Sunday, and she left him with the clothes on her back. And he sent out a letter to all of her friends, all of her classmates, everybody that he could get an address for that he knew. And he told all of them that Carolyn isn't really the saint that she tries to present. While she's taking the Lord's Supper every first day of the week, that really burned him up, that she would take the Lord's Supper every Sunday, and then they would actually prove that that is what the Bible says. He said she actually hooks up with a man every Sunday over there in Louisiana, in Leesville, close to the Army base, and she's been doing that for years. And if that wasn't enough to try to hurt her with, he included a story about me when I was a teenager. One day I was at my aunt's house in Texas, and she told me, Johnny, I got a copy of that letter. And I just thought, I read the letter and I just thought, why didn't somebody tell me how diabolical the devil really can be? You'll go to prison if you rob somebody. Yeah, boy, I got that one. I knew it, saw it coming. But this other stuff that the devil can do, and I'm still living, I'm just really, when I said a while ago, I was fearful about the good things that I heard God say to David, if you won't despise me, and I'm trying my best not to despise him, we're telling the truth. Well, just nothing so far has been able to curb our determination to tell the truth. And the more comfortable I get with God's mercy and his love and realize how good he's been to me, I just have to share it. I just have to keep presenting it to other people around me and hope and pray that they would get this. In the Church of Christ, y'all, this is the way that we treat people. Even as David also described the blessedness of the man unto whom God imputed righteousness without works. You know, I won't beat you over the head ever. You know why? Because I basically know that you can be righteous even when you're not always doing good. How do I know that? You mean to tell me what we've heard about the Church of Christ? Y'all so strict, y'all so rough, y'all so tough and mean on people? Well, I don't never ask nobody for money. And we don't have a tithe even with the members, so I'm not in their pocket. I probably have never preached, I doubt I preached 10 lessons on giving in 27 years. And I won't actually be on your case all the time, because if David can kill someone, take a wife and kill someone, and God's mercy not depart, there's always hope for you. In the Church of Christ, there's always hope for you. And I'm rooting for you, saying, blessed are those whose iniquities are forgiven and whose sins are covered, and God's mercy never departs. It's just like that. One night we said, in order to go to hell, you just about have to try. God is so good. Blessed is the man to whom the Lord will not impute sin. You know, I think we're getting pretty good at this. I'm saying us brethren, and we got brethren from a lot of different places up under here tonight. And we don't be hunting for each other's flaws. You know, and here's one of the reasons we don't. When we see them, we try to fix them. Oh, man, fixing flaws. So I'm not going to be hunting your flaws, because next thing I'll be having to try to help you fix them. And in America, I say that like George W. America. In America, we don't like being fixed, do we? We just don't like nobody up in our business. Tonight, I love you so much that I'm just going to say that I'll never show you the letter that my mom's last husband is spreading around. He's dead. I'm sorry to say he died about a year after he did all that. But still, I've got enough strikes against me to just about keep anybody from really listening to me until they found out about David and how God uses just about anybody. And so tonight, I'm just doing this just a little bit more because I want you to see it's everywhere. And all things are of God, who hath reconciled us to himself by Jesus Christ, and given unto us the ministry of reconciliation. Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he's a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. In the position that we're in, guilt is really a thing of the past. People in the Church of Christ don't feel guilty. I try to get them not to. If you pull the shade down and start thinking lightly about God, I try my best to encourage you not to do that. Are our sermons tough? I'm looking at members of the Church of Christ. Are our sermons tough? If you've been here at the tent meeting, we told stuff publicly on folk. And then we sang a song and all got to hugging on each other. And, I mean, it was really amazing. Why? Because there's always hope if we basically say we're not going to be despising, and there is no such thing as guilt in the Church of Christ if persons are paying attention to 2 Corinthians 5:19, to wit, that God was in Christ, reconciling the world unto himself, not imputing their trespasses unto them, and hath committed unto us, he hath committed unto us the word of reconciliation. Can I ask you tonight? Be reconciled to your Father. I'm not talking about your earthly father. That would be good too, but sometimes that's not possible. Be reconciled to your Father. He's done really, literally everything possible, and he kept his promise, and he put people in front of us like David, his son, and David, and now you're stuck with me with a invitation appeal. What am I trying to appeal to you to do? Remember what we said a moment ago? Did Michelle have to leave? We said when we come together, it's likely that somebody will die. Somebody will be willing to do what we were reading in Romans chapter 6. They'll be willing to be buried with Christ in baptism, wherein also we're raised to walk in newness of life. Crucifying the old man, there's that death, and burying it in the watery grave of baptism, that may be raised to walk in newness of life. That's my appeal tonight, is I'm giving you the best that God has to offer in the front, and I'm giving you all their flaws as we go along, and I'm just asking you, most preachers say, God will accept you. You come as you are. I'm saying back to you, I want you to accept this as I am. This is the best right now. Caleb's never been in prison with any of that kind of stuff. He could come up here and make an appeal. And we could try that tomorrow night. How about? But tonight, all these folk, they're saying, please do that. I think Caleb had 1,000+ people watching the other night. So all the people that are watching on Facebook Live, that's all I can do. I'm very, very thankful that you're here tonight. If you're here with us from the community, you don't know what you do to our spirit by letting us know that somebody, number one was the song, that somebody thinks enough of us to come out and give us encouragement. If you're here tonight, anything that we can do to help you along the way, remember what we said. We know that if we are thinking the way we should with God, He's going to do such and more than we thought if we'll just do what we're supposed to. So we're going to try our best while we stand and sing.
Usually, if Dad is preaching, then I have the closing remarks, and what Melissa is coming forward about is pretty much what my closing remarks would be. And Dad's illustration was we learn about God's law, and we have the concept that God sees everything, and we also have this concept that we can somehow hide ourselves from God. And so Melissa is asking for herself. She said, I want people to pray for me because I want to get a better understanding of hiding myself from God. And so, if we can look at this in Romans chapter 7, there's a verse where Paul says about himself, he says, we know, Romans 7, verse number 14, and he says, we know the law is spiritual, but I'm carnal, sold under sin. The things which I do, I allow not. That is one of those moments where we say, I don't speak that way. Paul is actually saying when he says I allow not, he is actually making the statement, the things that I do, I don't always understand why I'm doing those things. And so when Dad said that the word despise just means to not take God seriously, I think that a lot of Christians, like Melissa's saying, I would like to take God's law seriously. But when we do certain things and we start feeling the consequences of them, we tend to say, I didn't know it was that serious. That is the nature of being alive. It is unfortunate that we are having to learn as we go because spankings hurt. And so we're going to pray for Melissa this evening as we close, and certainly her request is all of ours. that we want to better understand God's rules and not just say, well, the rules are the rules. We want to understand why they're the rules. And I think that they're the rules because God has our best interests in mind. Can I say this as we close out? When Dad was telling those stories of his past, and I'll put that back on the screen. So I already knew all those stories and then some that he didn't tell. And I have known a lot of them most of my life. And I would think that even to some degree that he was telling me some stories at an age where people would say, maybe you didn't need to hear some of those stories when you were that young. But I will tell you that because that was part of my childhood, now that I am an adult, I am not too shocked when sinful people tell me what their sins are. And I don't need to judge them. And I believe exactly what he said about his half-brother. If you are a baby and you're born to two monsters, God knows you don't have a chance. And about 2019, I was talking with the man on the phone. It was me, this man, and my dad on a three-way phone call. My dad was having a hard time, and the man on the other end of the phone, he knew that my dad was having a hard time. And if you want to, you want to call it a moral failing, you want to call it a sin, what have you. The man on the other end of the phone, he said, Johnny, I'm disappointed in you. And I guess I would have been 26. And then he said, I'm disappointed in you, Johnny. He said, I just have to admit it. And then he kind of asked me on the three-way phone call to chime in. And I said, well, I don't feel that way. And he said, well, it hurt me. He said, Johnny Robertson's a big deal. He said, it hurt me. And I said, I know worse stories about my dad. I said, I don't really have a problem with this. You're doing no favors to your kids by letting them think that you're flawless. You're doing no favors to yourself by letting your neighbors think that you're flawless, because when you mess up, that's when everybody starts saying, oh, I can't believe that you did it. If I keep living long enough, you'll be surprised by what I do. And I'm just going to keep relying on the blood of Christ, and I'm going to say thank God for it. This is what we're inviting people to. And I say one more thing also. If this was a denomination and my dad was trying to swindle people, you know what he would have done? He would have concluded that story by saying, and God saved me, and you need to fund my ministry. And then we would pass the plate. But really all he was trying to say to you is, don't play stupid with the devil. And as Melissa said, I want to know better what the rules are, the laws are, and I want to know what the dangers are. There's a line in a movie where a woman invites a married man into her hotel room, and she says, do you want to come in and have a beer? And he says, you know what beer leads to? And then she said, more beer? Don't be stupid. You're on the job. You got coworkers the opposite sex, and they're inviting you to meet them in places you know you ain't got no business with them. Don't do it. Y'all, don't go to bars and get drunk and urinate out back and get arrested for indecent exposure and go into prison with indecent exposure on your record. And you tell them, well, I just went out back behind the bar, and they're going to say, yeah, right. Because they're going to think you did something dirty. Don't be stupid. All the way down. You're married, got a good wife, good kids, and you just start doing stuff like cheating on your taxes. Just hurting yourself all over the place. And you start talking about, well, the government immoral and blah, blah, blah. They'll put you in all kinds of trouble, and now you got your wife and your kids in trouble. That's what we're trying to do. God gives us laws to protect us, and we have the church to encourage each other. Thank you for being here tonight again. It's cooled off. It's still the weekend, and we appreciate your presence. We appreciate your encouragement by coming out. This evening, as we're all here, I'll just pray, and we'll dismiss. Our Father in heaven, we come to you now, and we give